Hello. Hello, welcome to my channel. These are the very first words I'm speaking this morning, so that's why my voice is a little weird. I would like to recommend a page for people who are interested in studying. It's called sparknotes.com. I have been using a variety of different pages online to study and to prepare study guides and things like that. One thing that I would like to point out is that no matter how many pages you find that help you study, you should still read the book. And I'm talking about literature. If you're studying literature and then you're assigned a book, you should read it. Then after you read the book, you go and you find additional pages online where you can find more information that can help you understand the book better. Do not go and read Cliff Notes thinking that it will substitute the experience of reading the book. This is the book, the last Toni Morrison book that I haven't read yet. I have read every other one of her books. And this one I started and stopped many times. A lot of things happened that made me stop reading it. But this time I'm going to follow through and I'm going to read the entire thing. Even though I do work a lot. But I'm going to keep powering through. I would like to read the plot overview just so people know what the book is about, and maybe I can get more people interested in reading it as well. Tar Baby by Toni Morrison. Shortly before Christmas, an unidentified sailor jumps overboard and swims toward the harbor of Quinifrence in the middle of the night. Unable to reach shore, he climbs aboard a small yacht and stows away. When a yacht lands, he disembarks onto a small island called Ile de Chevalier, and he hides again, this time at a house called L'Arbre de la Croix. Valerian Street and his wife Margaret live in the house, along with their servants, including Undine and Sidney. Jadine Childs, the niece of Undine and Sidney, has come to visit. Before coming back to the island, she studied at the Sorbonne, an education for which Valerian paid, and worked as a model in Paris. Margaret and Valerian fight a lot, mostly because Margaret has invited a number of guests to come to stay against Valerian's wishes. One of these guests is the street son, Michael, but Valerian doubts that he will really come. After a particularly fierce argument at dinner, one night, Margaret goes to her room, but she quickly returns to the dining room screaming. Sidney runs to Margaret's room and returns to announce that there is a man hiding in her closet. Everyone but Valerian is terrified. Valerian invites the man, whose name is Sun, to stay the night. The next morning, Margaret, who is extremely upset with Valerian, locks herself in her room. Meanwhile, Jadine's rich white boyfriend Rick has sent her a luxurious sealskin coat. Sun shows up in her room and she tries on the coat. And they talk in a flirtatious way that eventually starts to frighten Jadine. After Sun makes some sexually crude remarks, Jadine threatens to report him to Valerian, after which she goes to find Valerian. As another servant, Therese, does laundry, she thinks about Sun, who had been in the house for several days prior to his discovery, and whom Therese had been feeding. With Jadine gone to find Valerian, Sun showers in her bathroom. When he's clean, he looks much more attractive. He finds Valerian before Jadine does, and he impresses Valerian with his knowledge of gardening and his sense of humor. Valerian tells Sidney to help Sun get new clothes, and Gideon, another servant, and Therese take him shopping in a town near L'Arbre de la Croix. When Jadine sees the cleaned-up Sun, she decides not to tell Valerian about his behavior in her bedroom. Instead, she invites Sun on a picnic at the beach, and they talk a lot about their backgrounds. Despite their differences, they seem to connect on some level. On the way back from the picnic, their car runs out of gas, and Sun leaves to retrieve gas from a pump at the pier. While Jadine waits, she decides to seek shelter from the sun and abandons the car. On the way home nearby, she gets stuck in a swamp, but manages to escape. Undine is upset that Jadine and Sun seem to be getting closer, but she does not intervene. When Christmas arrives, Michael fails to show up, and the other guests get delayed because of bad weather. Margaret's spirits shrink and sink, and she abandons her elaborate cooking projects and leaves Undine to finish them. At Christmas dinner, Valerian upsets Undine, Sidney, and Sun when he announces that he fired Gideon and Therese for stealing apples. A heated argument breaks out. At the end of it, Undine reveals that Margaret abused Michael when he was a boy. Valerian goes into shock, and Sun and Jadine leave the table to go to bed together. Soon after, Jadine and Sun leave the island. They go to New York, having a great carefree time as lovers. They live in a borrowed apartment, and neither of them has a permanent job, but they don't seem to care very much about money. Meanwhile, back on the island, things are much more subdued, and Valerian refuses to let Margaret explain her actions to him. Undine and Sidney worry that they will be fired. When spring arrives, Jadine and Sun visit his hometown of Ilo, Florida. The trip is a disaster for their relationship because Jadine hates Ilo, and Sun loves it. The many differences between Jadine and Sun come to surface, and their divisions tear them apart when they end up back in New York. They fight more and more frequently. After a particularly violent confrontation, Jadine leaves Sun in New York behind. She intends to return to Paris, but first she stops at Ile de Chevalier to retrieve her sealskin coat. Undine is upset that Jadine seems to care more about the coat than about either Undine or Sidney. But her anger does not detain Jadine, and ultimately she heads to Paris, telling Undine and Sidney not to tell Sun where she has gone. Soon after she departs, Sun arrives in Queen of France, and Therese agrees to take him to Ile de Chevalier by boat, so he can look for Jadine. But instead of piloting him to L'Arbre de la Croix, as she had promised, Therese leaves Sun on a foggy part of the island, and she suggests that he still has a choice. He can either keep searching for Jadine, or he can join the race of wild horsemen on the island, descendants of the first slaves brought there. The island opens to accommodate Sun as he joins the horsemen. So this is just a plot overview. There is, of course, a lot of terms in literature that students will often get confused. Plot. Here goes. What is the plot? The plot is the story itself. What happens in the story? The narrative. What sort of narrative do we have here? This narrative is a third-person removed narrator telling the story. It's the type of narrative that is omniscient, because everything that happens in the story is told from the point of view of somebody who is not a part of the story, so it's not first person, it's third person. But this person knows everything that's going on inside the characters' heads. The moral is a lesson learned from the story. What kind of lesson will you learn from the story? It depends exactly on who you are. You can ask 10, 15, 20 different people and you might get different morals to a story. But the plot is always the same, because the plot is what happens in the story. It's what's written on the page. The moral is something that you yourself will get a lesson. You learn a lesson from reading a particular story, a particular novel, or short story, or whatever the case may be. Tar Baby by Toni Morrison. A lot of people feel offended just by looking at the title, Tar Baby. They think it might be something racist, and sometimes they may just not want to read it because they see the title, and they'll be missing out on so much because it really isn't what it seems. Toni Morrison is one of the best authors of our times, and she's still a living author. So there's still years and years and years of Toni Morrison for us to enjoy, and she's still around for us to ask questions about the book, questions about how she created the story and what certain symbolic elements may be. Because literature teachers, they will look at a particular passage in a story and they will read it and they will get all these ideas and symbolic elements, and then maybe that's not exactly what the author meant. So the beauty of having a living author among us is that we can still ask them. I want to see her in person one day and be there for one of her talks. I hope I get the opportunity before she retires from giving talks and interviews. This is an 11-minute video. I hope people enjoy it. And you know what I find extremely bizarre? How people feel such pleasure in giving a thumbs down to somebody's video based on how professional it looks or the kind of equipment they're using. I mean, if this is not what you came to see and you found something different, stop watching it and go find what you want. Why give somebody a thumbs down? I just find it stupid. But oh well. This is not going to be one of those videos that's going to go viral or anything like that. My channel's never going to be a channel with 1 million subscribers. I'm never going to do anything outrageous for that. So I'm happy with what I got going here. It's more of the videos that I make. These videos in particular are academic videos. Others are videos of me and my daughter goofing around and videos of what my life is like. Not that interesting. This is a kind of video that I make for people who are interested in literature, in English, in languages in general. If you're not interested in that, then don't watch it.